Humpy the Moose. Molly the cow moose splashed through the swampy valley of northern British Columbia. She stared one way, then the other, looking for something. It was June in the mountains. Swamp buttercups and Indian paintbrush blossomed all around. The moose did not look at them or notice the sweet-smelling air. Thrushes, song sparrows, and redwings sang from the bushes, but she did not seem to hear them. Sniffing the air, she raised her head and ran through the trees. There, at the opening of the wood, she saw it. She now stood at the edge of a lake. The water was still. The tall evergreen trees were reflected in it, and distant forest-covered hills and mountains showed through the misty air. Molly saw an island near the middle of the lake. It was covered with slender spruces. Water lilies grew near the shore. The moose listened and tested the air, again with her nose. Then everything looked safe. She stepped into the water and swam towards the island. There, she shook the water out of her coat and disappeared into the brush. The next day, a little long-legged cat tried to stand up beside Molly. She was Humpy. Little long-legged moose tried to stand up beside Molly. He was getting his first look at the world about him. Ferns and bushes almost hid him from in their leafy shade. Looking up, he saw the bright yellow-green tips of the hemlocks against the dark of the old needles and of the trunks of the trees. A Canada jay, also called a moose bird, peeked gently down from a branch and seemed to be surprised. Here was a baby moose, not even a day old, and yet it could stand up all by itself. The jay's young ones had to be fed in the nest for weeks before they could get about or fly. But Humpy was not yet able to care for himself. He must hide by the mossy log under the berry trees while his mother was feeding out in the lilies. He saw many wonderful things as he lay there. Bees and butterflies flew from flower to flower and sometimes even lighted on him. Once a rabbit hopped right beside him and ate without seeing him. Most animals see only things that move, and Humpy lay perfectly still. When he was still, no scent came from him, and the bunny's twitching nose could not smell him. Even a wolf or a bear would have a hard time finding him. In a few days, Humpy was scampering after his mother in the woods and tasting some of the plants she was eating. Want to read some, Mom?
Humpy grew fast, and in little more than a month, his mother decided he could run and jump well enough to see more of the world with her. She had chosen the island for his first home because wolves and bears were less likely to be there to bother them. There were enemies. These were enemies they needed to watch for in the deep forest. Men also came there in the autumn to hunt. Humpy and his mother had already eaten most of the fresh leaves and water lilies around the island, so now Molly led her son into the water and they swam off to shore. On the mainland, the two moose found plenty of food. They liked leaves the best. Their legs were so long that it was hard for them to reach the grass anyway. Where beavers had cut down poplar trees, many young shoots grew around the stumps, and their juicy leaves were easy to reach. Later in summer, when the lower leaves had been all eaten, Humpy had to stand on his hind legs to reach the ones left. Sometimes Molly would walk over a small tree and bend it down to get to the leaves. Humpy knew very little about the big world. He and his mother were the only moose in it so far as he knew, but he was soon to find out otherwise. One autumn night, while the two moose were peacefully chewing their cud, they heard a loud call. It came from across the stream near the lake. Humpy did not know what it was, but his mother did. She acted pleased, for it was a moose calling. Autumn is the time of year when the father moose tries to find a mate, and sometimes there is a lot of fighting when two are after the same cow moose. Molly waited until the bull moose called again. Then she answered and ran into the woods. Humpy followed, puzzled. If she answered, why did she run away? Far away, they heard a splash, then the crashing in the woods that sounded louder and nearer. Then a huge bull moose burst out of the bushes into the open space near them. He stopped and stared around in the moonlight. Surely the call had come from somewhere near here. He raised his head and sniffed the air from side to side, then lifted up his lips and snorted. Humpy saw the moonlight shining on the sharp points of his large antlers, which looked like flattened tree branches fastened together.